Hey guys, welcome back to the Young Creatives podcast. In today's episode, we sit and speak with Nick Jones, a 29-year-old videographer located in the Shreveport-Bossier area. In today's episode, Nick gives insight on how he was able to embrace change and how you can also while becoming a student to life. Stay tuned because you don't want to miss this episode.
Here at Revision Marketing Group, our team of young professionals get it. Created with youth in mind, we strive to educate, inspire, and promote authentic creativity across all job fields. This is Young Creatives. Thank you for joining us on this.
Yeah, well, it was a good time. I couldn't say no. Could have, but
I'm like, you could have said
no. I wanted to do this. Yeah, it's nice to see everybody again. It really is. Yeah.
Catch up.
Yeah.
I'm crying.
Hey,
we'll see everybody again. Like you worked with Sydney and Mikayla.
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah, and Michael.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back.
Yeah.
We're super excited to have you on the podcast. So for people who don't know you or are just tuning in, who is Nick Jones?
It's a very simple answer. Nobody. No. Who is Nick? That's it's not tough because it's always like weird saying who you are. So I am not the things that I do, but the best way for me to gauge this question is to tell you what I do. I'm currently a student at the DMI Institute. I'm on the road to becoming a certified animator and VFX artist. I coach I'm assistant coach on a youth basketball team.
Oh, that's new.
Yeah. I'm a bass singer in a choir.
What?
Yeah. And I do freelance video editing.
That's the one thing that I felt like I knew about you.
The funny part about it is before like we got into the conversation, you've been like, what's new? And he's telling you all these things and didn't mention any of those things.
Well, yeah. Well, I figured there was a podcast about to happen soon, so I wanted to, you guys
keep it juicy.
Yeah.
Keep some real authenticity into the podcast.
Hey.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, these are all new things for me. I think it hit me maybe like a couple weeks ago. I was just thinking, I'm like, man, in every aspect of my life right now, I'm a student and I'm learning. Mm-hmm. And I would have never told you that, I'll join a choir or I'll sure, sign me up to be an animator or man, I want to coach basketball. But these things are kind of happening. So it's, again, I think part of the reason why it's tough for me to say who I am because, I was doing something completely different 2 years ago before moving to Louisiana. And 2 years after being here, I'm doing something completely different. So it's an ever unfolding process and it's been fun.
I like that you said that you're not like what you do.
Yeah.
We haven't heard that response yet.
Yeah. Well, if I tell you who I am, you'll be like, ugh. Let's turn it off. Let's turn it off. No, but I really told you who I am. No. Yeah.
No, that's exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's fun.
Awesome. So are you doing that with like church and stuff or did you find like some friends? Yeah.
So I have really good friends at the church that I attend. They're really like family. I know people say they're like, oh, they're like family, but they are really like family. And I just randomly, we have some wonderful hymns and I couldn't help but sing them. And someone came and grabbed me. They were like, hey, well, we need some more male singers. And so I've been learning how to read music, which is like learning a new language. Mm-hmm. And that along with, and this is all happening at, within the church. And my friend Marcus, he's a parent to his boys play on the team. And so he's just like, hey, their, YMCA ball is coming up and would you mind helping me out to coach the guys or coach the boys? And I was like, yeah. So it's all kind of happening within that. So it's been it's cool. It's really cool.
So cool.
So in the span of, I don't know how long, this is like all happening at once or?
It seems like it. It's all slow building. And what's weird about it, it's not weird actually. I find myself doing the things that I've always loved, which is basketball and singing.
So it's like coming back to you.
It's coming back, because I think I might be ready for it. Because I think sometimes we can live in such a way, people say all the time, like, follow your passion, follow your passion. And sometimes I can be informed by so many things and not necessarily one that's deeper than, one that's like, no, I really love doing this. And if there were no societal rules, I would do this all the time. And no one would have to pay me for it. But we play the game of life. And so I think a lot of that stuff is just informed. So for me to be like, hey, I would love to be a coach, having been away from the game of basketball for some time, it was like I would love to be able to share what I've learned, where I messed up and where I've seen success. And I'm getting a chance to do that. And there's no money tied to it, which is kind of cool. And singing, like, hey, Nick, will you go join a choir? Well, no, I'm too cool for that. And my guys would laugh at me. So yeah, it's just things are kind of coming back. And I would like to think that I'm living from the heart these days, which is it's a completely different gauge on life. And so, yeah.
That sounds magical.
It is, but it's so simple. It's so simple.
It is very simple, but then like to actually walk it out and do it, it's not.
No. It's like walking through fire.
Oh.
It's like walking through fire because people are, of course there are going to be judgments. So you're going to judge yourself too. You're going to judge yourself based on the judgments that you perceive other people may have of the thing that you're doing or pursuing. And I think that's part of like finding oneself when they not arrive, but when you are living as a human being. Is people want you to live in a way that they deem that fits you or that fits their view of you.
And their mold of you.
And their mold of you. Exactly. So we have a real bad tendency to try to create others in our own image and likeness. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said that you're not from here.
No, ma'am.
Where are you from?
Originally from Little Rock, Arkansas.
How'd you end up here?
How did I end up here? It was a long story, but I'm trying to see how I can make this short without leaving out some things that may be useful. Let's see. I was doing YouTube for 6 years. I did it full time as an influencer and as a video editor and sort of like a creative guide amongst my friends or my friends at the time. And we did that for some time. It was successful. And I think in that, well, while I was in that world, it's like there's something missing. Everybody has those moments like, oh, there's something missing. Like everything is going right. Why am I not happy? And I started to seek that out. I wanted to seek that out. Like, what is going to help me feel fulfilled? Because ultimately, that's what I want. I want to be fulfilled in life, and I want to I don't have to feel it. I want to become the person that I
want to be.
Not even that I'm really made to be.
Mm-hmm. So you have the desire to be, like, it's just there in you.
Yeah. And so am I seeking that, just weird trials and tribulations that kind of revealed some things about the world and about myself, truly. And in order for me to make some changes, I needed to be in a new setting. And I have a wonderful family in Minden, Louisiana, who were my aunt at the time. We were having conversations about a lot of the things that I was going through at the time because it seemed like everything went wrong. Everything. And I lost friends during that time. I was running around, which, you would like to think that you have so many friends, but when life gets real for you and you're like, man, I got to change something. And then you get a response like, well, why change? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh gosh, I never knew that you were actually like that. Mm-hmm. And so things start to reveal themselves. And I had family that I was talking to, my aunt, like I said, and she was going through a similar awakening, like something's off. And it was right when the pandemic hit. And so after talking with her, she's like, well, baby, you can always come home. That's love. But yeah. And so I did. I stayed with them, and my time in Louisiana has been the most healing. But short answer, I ended up here seeking the good, the beautiful, and the true, and see how that, seeing how my seeking that would look in the world. So yeah, Louisiana is part of my journey.
And so that brought you to Shreveport.
It brought me to Shreveport.
Okay.
It's weird.
No, most definitely.
Yeah.
So you did YouTube as an influencer?
Yeah.
So have you always been a creative?
I've always been a creative, yeah. And not in the sense that I think sometimes I'm in the process of trying to retrieve what creative means, because man has always been creative.
So what does creative mean to you?
For me, it's a means of sharing my truest insights about the world or my experience in the world. And my outlet, I looked at the questions. And for me, my outlets are, well, I did. I did. Look, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? I'm here.
Thank you.
And part of my outlet is like music. It's writing music and just writing in general. But yeah, so what does being creative mean to me? Yeah, it's really sharing my truest insights about my experience in life.
How long have you been writing music?
How long? I would say since my mom tells me this story. She says when I was about 8 years old, she found my composition notebook and I had written down I had a few poems, a few like lyrics, like written down, a couple verses written in there. And I've always taken to words because, as a shy kid and as one who,
Shy?
Yeah. As a shy kid, I was shy.
Did you think that? You pick up as like shy from him?
Absolutely, I do.
Oh, wow.
He seems like an outgoing person, but
I mean, it depends on the day. But by shy, I just mean reserved, because I think most of us can be that way, right? We reserve certain parts of ourselves because we feel like the parties aren't necessarily ready or open to really hear about our experience as we really experienced it. And so as someone who has a desire to let that out, it was always like, well, I probably should just shut up, or something like that. But that was my earliest. It was 8 years old. And numbers weren't my thing. I remember we started like, when you start to learn well, here's the digital clock, but we're going to teach you how to read analog clocks. So you got to read the hands on and I was like,
I'm not interested.
I'm not interested in numbers that look like letters.
Yeah.
Just give me the words and I just want to keep the words. But yeah, nothing else really never been my thing. But I found that just having a desire to write and really having the desire to want to communicate, it was the only way that I could, do it best.
So how'd you get into videography? Or when did you get into videography?
It was right when I moved to Fort Smith. So after dropping out of college, I ended up in Little Rock for some time to work. And I had taken a position up Fayetteville, Arkansas. And while I was there, I was working some crazy hours. I worked some crazy jobs. I ran a bread route in Northwest Arkansas. And then I worked as it's called a DME technician, but all it is when people go to in-home hospice. So instead of going to a facility, they do hospice in-home during their later days. And so I was the guy who took the equipment to them. So if they needed a hospital bed, I took it to them, set it up. If they needed oxygen tanks, I took it to them, set that up.
Wow.
So I did that. And that was the two jobs that I ran for a year, but I was like working independently, and I'm maybe 20, 21 at the time, doing like big boy work that I wasn't necessarily prepared for. Yeah. And so all I wanted to do is run down to talk with my friends about a lot of the stuff that I was experiencing, or to just be free from it. and they were doing YouTube at the time, and they had been doing it. I think the channel had maybe plateaued for some time at about 500,000 subscribers, so it was already a thing. But me coming in, I was just the awkward guy who was probably going to say the inappropriate thing, and challenge some thoughts and ideas. And the main guy, whose name is Trey, he sweet guy, he saw the potential in how we could think amongst one another and the differences in thought. And so he showed me some of those early things around the video, because I wanted to be involved, but I didn't have the skills. And so he would just show me things here and there. And as we grew together and as the channels grew, we would do more things. So we did 3 podcasts. We did 3 subsequent channels under the main channel. And all of them required something different, or a different sort of creative. And that's how I got started. So I had it's mostly self-taught. So a little bit of guidance from what he had learned, who taught himself. And then he shared what he knew with me, and it's been self-teaching since then. And then I got here and it really kind of evolved.
So with 3D animation, what spiked that interest?
It was actually...
Yeah, I'm curious of this too.
It was one of the early projects. So one of the clients that you guys work with, they were, of course, wanting to add more value to the business that they're serving. Wanted to add more value. They were like, hey, you're a video guy, but would you mind trying to animate this? If it don't work, cool, but, have a look at it and see if it can be done. And I took a look at it, and it was doable. Did it, and it was used. And so I think it's when that's when my interest was peaked at that point. But I knew it was like difficult work. Of course it's difficult. It's just a lot to learn, but that's when it started.
That's so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You said earlier that, like, as someone that wanted to communicate, but people weren't necessarily wanting to hear, I guess, that you just chose to opt out of, I guess, conversations. And then that's how you kind of got into writing music.
Writing music. Yeah. I always say that I feel like people listen better if it's put in a song. And that's why we get nursery rhymes, and that's why it's A, B, C, D instead of A, B.
Yeah.
C. It's just a different, or it hits you, it touches you differently. And having been affected in that way, like I grew up on R&B and soul music. The first piece of music I heard was The Temptations and the 5 Heartbeats. Now these are guys who've lived a hell of a life, and a lot of heartbroken music. And this is a lot of music that I was exposed to. So I had a sense of my sensitivity to music, and that it was okay to be vulnerable, and this is how some people do it. And so, yeah, I can really write. Am I answering your question? Am I on track? Because sometimes I can talk. Okay,
you're on track.
So yeah, it was writing music. Like, how can I really tell you? Because I don't really think I can tell you the way that I would love for you to hear it, just in normal conversation, not this thing. So,
okay. And so with that, so we're talking just this conversation. Do you feel like you're more of a direct or indirect person in the way that you communicate?
Direct. I think well, it depends. It depends on the situation. Sometimes directness could be more, it can come off as harsh. So, if one thing, especially working as like an independent operator in the bread route and during, in the hospice field, one thing you learn is to listen first. And you gauge it by that. And you say by direct, it's just say what needs to be said or say nothing at all, and communication is always going to be that. It's like, say what needs to be said or say nothing at all.
Does that affect your creative process?
No, I can be very direct in imaginative ways when I'm writing music. I find I can be very direct, and again, I don't know how people think about these, but words register in my mind all sorts of ways. So can I ask you, how do you mean it? Like, well, you asked me the question, but I guess I'm like, how do you mean it? Direct, give me a situation,
A situation.
or an example.
Do I have an example? Okay, so my question was, do you think you're a direct or indirect person? That depends on the situation. Yeah. And how does that play out in your creative process? Is that a better question?
Oh, yeah. No, I got you. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty direct in my creative process. And I think that's sort of where people can view me as like disagreeable, or maybe the dude just don't listen, or he's a know-it-all, or he's a hard-headed nitpicker. Yeah. I can get stubborn in that. But I think a lot of, I think the missing, maybe it's not missing, but part of the creative process and what is to be produced from that, or what's to come out of that process, is the belief that it's really the belief. Like, I believe in this. And I think, you hear it in different, if you're listening to, music, you can tell who's actually real about what it is that they're saying and who's not. And I think the same goes with a video, you know what I mean? Like, or something that calls for creative and ideas and all that. And I will be stubborn in that, because I'm I scrutinize a lot of the things that come out of my own head. So I've been in dialogue with people who've already proven themselves as creatives, not because I want to be them, but these are the people that scrutinize what it is that I think is good or great or whatever it is.
Right.
So one, it gives me a real gauge on things, and sometimes it's hard to not explain that, but to do that in a kind way. But the creative process it's a lot of things. It's a roller coaster. It can be violent. It can be, you have your ebbs and flows. It's a lot of that. So, and I don't hide from it. And I don't know how to warm people up to be a part of the process as it unfolds without me being who I am, which is naturally disagreeable.
No. Because there was like times when we started like our first podcast here where it was like a complete roller coaster. Like some days we're like super good. Yeah. Some days we're like, we're done after 10 minutes because it was really hard. And I think it's because we were all passionate about it. I ain't going to say, it was Nick's idea. Yeah. And he's going to say, no. It was his idea.
No, we've actually said that on the last episode of Entre Network, like episode 12, I believe. Sydney's like, the idea of the podcast came from Nick Jones. This is Nick Jones.
Hey, Nicholas
Jones. As shown on the
it really did.
Official invite.
When we were all locked in a house, apartment, whatever it was, last February.
Yeah. And we talked about that, like that whole, what the podcast could be, what it would be, the thoughts. Like one, it was done over online meetings. And not everybody was happy. Most of the ideas were scrapped. So if you had one, that's just what it was. If you didn't have one, that's just what it was. But that didn't matter, because the end goal is the only thing that we really care about. So whatever the feelings involve, and whatever's involved in the process is just involved, but it's all leading up to the thing.
Right.
So yeah, it doesn't hinder my creative process, but sometimes it can hinder me from playing well with others. And that means that if this is what you want to do, well, you don't have that skill. Sometimes I'm overconfident. I think I can just pick up anything and learn it right away and do it. So sometimes it calls for me to humble myself and reach out to people and say, hey, well, you're really good at this. You're really good at this. Would you mind helping me with that? And the more I allow for that to happen, the better. And I I think the group, if the more the group can understand that we all bring our individual talents, I cannot compete with you because I don't have to.
Right.
Because I'm not born to. I'm not born to do it. It's not me versus you. It's like, what are we about to do? You know, and the more I kind of stay in that mindset, you know, a lot of things can happen. But
I'm about to mess up a quote like I always do. But this morning I was on social media and there was a post that said, when you've made it to the top, whatever that means, you see that people are more collaborative, and then people at the bottom are the ones that are competing with each other. You don't have to compete with each other or with one another.
And two brains are always better than one.
That's my favorite quote you ever say. He would say that every single day. And like, sometimes I'd just be like, yeah, whatever, shut up. But like, for real. Like, if there's one thing I took away from Nicholas Jones.
Hey.
Two brains are better than one.
Yeah, and I got it from Lil Wayne. True story.
Love that. Yeah. Love that.
But that's what I'm saying. I think, but that's why I be telling you, listen to the lyrics, because sometimes you'll get something that the ability for you to transform something, no matter what it is. And I think that's why it's important to get, you know, to have conversations like you all do, and to get the beliefs and the perspectives out there. And at some point you'll find, something shows itself as, how do you say, as the, oh no, this is where we all agree. This is where we all, it's this thing. And only
so
we could make it
that truth for.
Yeah. And only us could have created it in this way. So I think that's, therein lies the originality and the real creative when people actually collab. Yeah.
I like that.
I think
I've
it's
never
true.
thought about it in that
I think it's true.
aspect, or even trying to visualize it.
I got a question for you, Nick.
Hey,
So I don't know if you remember this when you were asking me how girls think of things, and I was asking you about how guys think of things. Little questions here and there, but it was like actually times that like it made sense, and it was just like, because I would get so frustrated with the way that Trevor was doing things. And I would ask Nick, I would be like, is this normal? Do guys actually do this? And he'd be like, yeah, like this is like, it makes sense to me because, and XYZ. And when Christian thought of this podcast episode, I knew that
so I do remember some of those conversations. I remember one distinctly. I was sitting in a chair like I'm like whatever, and then you was probably over here. We had a few of those. Yeah, I do remember that. I do remember it.
It was good times.
It was.
So with this episode, we like our main idea was like to kind of talk about guys and girls' perspectives and how they differ. And so do you find it difficult to understand women? Why or why not?
No, because I mean, women are people. They're human beings just like me, just like men. Human beings, we're not two different creatures. I mean, we are, but we have more in similar. I mean, we have more in common than not, I think. So why? Because, you know, women are human beings, you know what I mean? Like I think I was able to learn this during just in like maybe high school, maybe or junior high. And, cause I was the guy who would write you a letter. If I liked you, if I thought you was cute, I was going to write you a letter.
Aww.
I was going to do a lot of those things. But I mean, you know, some rejection came with that, but I didn't mind rejection. And, I say that to say that what I learned during those years is that women, I mean, the girls at that time, they liked that, you know, no matter what was happening, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna go date the popular guy. I'm gonna go date the thug. I'm gonna go date this guy. I'm gonna go date this type. I was always just like a regular guy. I never minded being a regular guy. And I was who I was, and I couldn't fake anything. I didn't smile all that much during those years, but I was just myself as much as I could be. And what I found is that we want the same things. We just want to be accepted. We just want to be understood. We just want to be encouraged. Like it's no different. I don't think it's any different. I mean, of course, there's some differences, but for the most part, yeah, I'm not trying to understand women. I'm trying to understand the person. I'm not trying to understand women in general. Like, you're a unique person. You're a unique person. I might have a better shot at trying to understand just you.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to have to like link your social media because this is going to be good. That's good. A lot of people are going to be interested in that concept. I've never heard that before because I feel like I fall in the category of trying to understand like men.
Yeah. That's where we all go wrong.
Because there's just like a general stereotype, like all men are the same, all women are the same.
Well, I think there are certain aspects where like men think like a man would think this way and a woman would think this way just naturally. Those truths, like those just hold to be true.
Yeah. That is. I mean, it might help to watch like some male comedians because we still have some representatives who are out there and they're honest about the male experience. Like we're, they say, we don't think logic first. Logic isn't always first. It's not.
What's first?
Huh?
What's first? Never mind.
Boobs.
That's interesting because one of the questions that we were going to touch on was men tend to think with like more of the left side of their brain and versus women who think with the right side, and like the left side is supposed to represent like logic and analytical things, and then the right side's more like
creative freedom.
Yeah.
And like just
emotion.
Yeah, emotion and creative freedom overall. And the biggest thing that I was learning when I researched this was men tend to think front to back. So they're either on the analytical side or just the creative side, when women tend to think left to right. So that's why they can think both ways faster in a way. But
and said are better multitaskers as well. Handle more better than a man would because of the way that they think with the brain.
Well, I mean, okay, so I don't know how to answer that question, and I'm not going to say I have a real definite answer.
Do you feel like you like you fit in one of those molds?
I try to use my whole brain as much as possible. And so it's you know what I'm saying? It's like, hey man. And I mean, sometimes you reason within yourself and you say, hey, well, this a little less logic here.
Yeah.
Be a little bit more. And I think, but to say earlier, like, I think women do have a naturally more compassionate, naturally more loving, naturally more affectionate. Not saying that men aren't, but of course we're just trying to kind of train that this is the way guys are and this is the way women are, or conditioned. But I mean, we've had conversations, and you're sharp and you don't think emotionally. I've never caught you thinking emotionally.
Yeah, it is more of a like logical thing for me.
Yeah, so
I caught her catching emotionally.
Yeah. I mean, it can happen. Hey, look, it can happen. We all get there. Like, men are emotional too. I mean, we're like whole people. I mean, trying to be whole people.
Yeah.
But
so let me ask you this: how do you think that affects like men and women in the job field? Like, do you think traditionally men are gonna have like higher ranking jobs than women because they think more logically, or like if, let's say like with women, they'll be more likely to go in like healthcare or something because they're more compassionate and emotional and they take care of people like that?
It depends on how the woman view herself or how the man view himself. Well, it depends on how the woman view herself, I think. I think if you put yourself in a box or in the box that exists, then I got to go because I'm compassionate. I got to go be a nurse or healthcare provider of some sort. And that's doable. That's a very, it's commendable. And the fact that the fact that there's a greater population of women tending to people who are ill and or dying or whatever, I think that's really commendable work. So there's never a like, yeah, you should go do this. But to think that you can only think with one side or you're more dominant on the other side, I think you may limit yourself, be you man or woman. And one of the guys that there's a story about a man who lived, and his name is Basil the Great, and he was the guy in an ancient Christian community who started orphanages and hospitals. And I think upon his dying, they during the eulogy, or is it a eulogy? Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you're speaking about this guy, but they were I think one of the remarks that was said about him is that he was, and this isn't original to me, I heard this from somebody else, but I thought it was it's like, I want to remember this. But anywho, he said that he walked the earth as if he owned it, but he was as gentle as a mother. And this was said about a man. And so I think incorporating as much as you can, like, all of who you really are, like who you're made up. Like, we're not made to not be compassionate. That's just not how it works. Right. You know, it's like, oh, you don't get the compassion.
It's a learned behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you're willing to unlearn it, I think that's where it starts. But to answer your question more specifically, as how does it play out in the workplace? One, why does it matter if you have a higher paying job, right? So I think there are stories of the woman who was on NASA there's the lady who was on NASA, and that's a very, you know, if we're using the terms, that's very left brain dominant field of work. Right. And it may be, but I would say that she was also, if she was that passionate there, she might have been as passionate as a mother. I think they kind of correlate, as opposed to, well, because she's like this, she can't be like that. Right. So, yeah, I don't know if any of that made sense, but.
No, it did. Yeah. So when was the time that you felt like, or I guess like for both of you, that you just felt like it was just like the communication isn't there?
Oh, I have those times all the time.
Yeah.
Specifically between a man and a woman. And why do you think that? Because I know we talked about this with the nonverbal communication. As far as like,
you're welcome.
As far as like, because I know, Nick, when I say I'm fine versus like,
what does that mean?
What does that mean?
I'm fine.
Or how was work today, Christian? It was okay. Yeah. It was fine.
Well, where did the communication break? So I think we're living in a time where men and women, I have to think this way. So some men are going to do certain things and they go to declare themselves alpha or as an alpha male. And I think on the other side too, you're going to have women who you do certain things, you adopt certain attitudes, and you're like, okay, I'm an alpha woman. Mm-hmm. But I was having this discussion yesterday with some people, and we were talking about the golden rule: treat
people who you want to be treated the way you want to be treated, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, but we know it. We know it. Just instinctually, we know it. And when we lose sight of that, I think that's when the problems arise. But something that's really when that was given out, because a lot of this is what's been passed down to us from, you know, the cliches that we use. They've been passed down for ages,
and we don't question them.
And we don't. But when it was first rendered, it was more along the line of treat your neighbor as being yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's like, no, okay, I really am going to treat you as if I'm you. I don't know what, but at least that shift in mind opens up something completely, opens up for something completely different to take place. One, you get some empathy. You know, understanding can happen at that point. But I think we're coming in not wanting resolution when we come in to communicate. Like, do we really want resolution?
Just want to be right.
Right. Or do you just want to be heard? Like, what do you actually? So a lot of the times in a lot of my relationships, I would just, depending on what the conflict was, if I could sense that there was no resolution. All right, we can talk about it later. And then to come up, nah. The day after, it's a completely different conversation. We both rested.
And you're actually discussing like what the issue is instead of like just those emotions in the moment.
Boom. Boom. So it's really just about it's self-control. Like, man, I'm not always one to listen to how my exes or whatever. I wasn't always amped to listen to how your day was. I didn't always feel like listening to you, but I would listen. Let's just listen.
Yeah.
If I didn't hear you, and sometimes it helps, like, okay, if I'm the person who's listening to what's being expressed, okay, what do you want me to do?
Right.
Are you seeking for me to are you just seeking an ear, or are you seeking advice? It's to ask as opposed to, well, I'm gonna give you some, I'm gonna give
assume.
Yeah. So it's definitely a give and take, but you have to give first. Mm-hmm. You have to give, and you don't have to do anything, but as much as I can, I try to give before I take, whatever that means.
I don't know. I feel like I'm always talking about, and you've told me this before, I'm always talking about how big communication is. Like, just communicate. It's not that hard to communicate. But then, like, when it's actually time to communicate, it's not as easy done as it is said. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like you've told me before that I have like emotional intelligence, but I feel like I lack in that aspect. So
good. That means you can grow some.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm like the best. Yeah. So I don't know. What was the question again?
What do men are different? Where did the conflict happen between men and women and communicating?
Oh yeah. Definitely wanting to be heard and not really like addressing the issue. I think a lot of the times, for me personally, in past relationships, whether it be like romantic or just friendships, it's like wanting to be right. And instead of like tackling, instead of like y'all like arguing to like fix the problem, you're like fighting each other. And that just doesn't really resolve anything. So
yeah. And you're fighting one another with, what am I fighting you with? Like, who else is with me? Is it that person that hurt me in middle school that I never forgave? Is it that time my dad said this to me? Is that time my mom did this?
Right.
Who all fighting with me when I finally address you? When we finally go to discuss this? And so part of communication is, one, learning how to communicate with yourself. So even if I'm the one who has the problem that needs to express it with whomever I'm dealing with, or whoever I have the problem with, I need to start using reason. Like, I think that's the only, if I can reason through, like, okay, why am I so, like, it's hard to do it in the moment, but to take that little, as much as you can, just outside yourself a little bit. Because there's always that voice, like, calm down. But you're so passionate in the moment, but you hear that voice that's like, calm down. And we talked about this, but I'm like, but leading up to that, you probably should be in conversation with that voice that's like, calm down, before you even go to address it. But yeah, who's all communicating with you? Am I just reenacting the way I was communicated? Am I talking? And I mean, I've seen this in my own life, like, especially in like coaching. I was coached a very particular way. It was very militant. And I noticed that with the boys, whereas like they do something, if they're not like straight pencils, standing there, not talking, not even, don't breathe until I finish saying what I need to say. I can be that way because that's how I was kind of taught. And I think it's the same. That's how the game was communicated to me. And so it's natural for me to want to communicate it that way. But I noticed that, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that. And it just takes that, like, I can't do it this way.
So
what about for you?
Yeah.
Well, to argue that, as far as like, let's say someone has like a mental disability, such as like depression, anxiety, different things like that, and they're not able to see that or hear that voice in their head.
Yeah.
Who's at fault?
Who's at fault?
Like, if, let's say I have a really bad anxiety about, like, let's say in general, like, I have a really bad anxiety about Trevor leaving me or whatever it is. which I don't.
Yeah.
We're married, whatever. Let's say I have this anxiety and he starts getting angry and blah, 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 blah. And I'm trying to diffuse that situation because I have that anxiety. I'm not communicating that anxiety, but I'm trying everything I can to say like, hey, like, da-da-da-da-da, just trying to fix it. Like, is that something that should be done because of what I have, or is that something he should understand even though it's not communicated?
Well, I don't see how he can understand it if it's not communicated.
Right.
It might help to always take the onus upon yourself. So the moment a part of our depression and anxiety, at least that I found in my own depression and anxiety, is one, is you're not too good for it. It's part of human condition. Everybody has felt it for forever. You're not too good for these feelings. And it's not always easy not to define yourself by it. So it's just like, yeah, I'm just an anxious person. But the more you tell yourself that, the more it becomes, I was listening to a song, it's like, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But if your conversation with yourself, the way you communicate with yourself is in this way that I am this, I am anxious, I am depressed.
You start to believe that. That's like your reality.
And your mind is going to have a hard time seeking a solution. Like, how else can we think about this? And so these things express themselves, but do you want like I don't know. What I find anxiety and depression, right? Depression is when I have failed to express. And anxiety really comes from me putting demands on other people and the way that life should be. Mm-hmm. It's kind of where these things arise. And who's at fault? Nobody but me. I have to be.
Right.
Because if I go to blame you, I can never really deal with the issue within myself.
Right. And
so I think part of in finding that voice is using it to yourself and by yourself. And for me, that's always writing. So you start a dialogue, and I try to never start a dialogue with myself, be it in a journal, without seeking a way to either transform the situation or to find some resolution or solace. Or to give myself some piece of advice. You know, they ask, like, if you was to advise a friend, how would you advise a friend? And you get to take a slight objective point of view. You know, how would you advise a friend that was dealing with the same thing you're dealing with? You get to gauge it that way. Like, sometimes you got to psych yourself out this shit.
Right.
But the mind is capable of doing that. But I don't know if that answered your question. But
yes. So, like, when Nick touched on, like, sometimes the party isn't ready to hear stuff, or like they're not ready for that situation. I think with like mental disorders, the people who have them are constantly scared of that situation, that the party's not ready to hear it. So they just bottle it up and they bottle it up. But then specifically with myself, I have these expectations of people to understand me when they could never know because I haven't told them. And so obviously it's taken time to like tell them and like explain it, and then like tell myself like they're not going to know if they don't hear me say it. Like, they can make assumptions and they can like say, oh, she's just an anxious person. But like realistically, as far as like expectations, it's super hard because it's like you have these expectations of people when they don't even know what
they are.
They are, because they really do change day by day. Like, one day you can be super anxious, one day you're not. And so it's just like you have to be able to communicate those things because...
And most times people are trying to, as soon as you wake up, you're trying to understand yourself. Like, how am I feeling? I'm feeling like this. You're trying to understand yourself. Like, everybody,
or you should be.
You know, like everybody
should be trying to understand yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody you dealing with yourself. The first thing you got to deal with when you wake up is yourself.
Yep.
And if you want to set yourself up for a decent day, you should be constantly dealing with yourself as often as you can. And sometimes that means having a strategy in place. So whenever I know I know the situations that make me anxious, what do I have in place? when that moment arises? Have I come up with some strategy? And we're very particular people.
Yeah.
Like, you know what gives you, and the more you can sometimes it's just the understanding of yourself that eases it. Sometimes you just got to admit to yourself what it is. And that's the remedy for it.
Or like having like somebody that you trust that can help you like get to that point. Cause I know that like I've had moments like that, like where I just feel, I get frustrated. I don't necessarily feel like I get like, I don't really feel like I get like anxiety, like as much as somebody else, but I get like frustrated. And I know like I've been able to like come to you with like whatever the situation is, and you'll listen, but then like you'll ask me like point blank, just a specific question that will help me like recenter and like come back to it's me. Yeah. Because most of the time it's like, not most of the time, I'm going to say 100% of the time it is you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest realities. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, that's one of the hardest realities to deal with, or one of the hardest things to come to terms with, is that no matter how somebody treats me, like, it's me, because I have to get a handle on it myself,
Right.
no matter what it is. Because I mean, life is kind of, it's an anxious piece of work. I mean, who's not affected? Like, who's not affected with tragic events and anxiety and depression and pain?
They're normal feelings.
And these have all, as long as man has been walking, it's been that way. Imagine the first one, like, getting here and like, bro, what the hell?
What is this?
I'm anxiety.
Like, and it'll freak you out. And I think that's kind of what, that's why we make things. Because everything we make is a solution for something.
And that goes back to like creativity and how everybody is a creative.
Yeah, but you got to create for yourself. And I think the best creation one can undertake is how they nurture their inner world. You're always going to be the architect of that. Mm-hmm. Nobody else, and that's the beauty of it. Nobody else could cultivate that for you. And it can be as wonderful as you allow it to be. Mm-hmm. And it's doable and it's possible. And I think it's helpful to find those people who have done it, who are in the act of doing it, and because they serve as an example and proof that you can kind of trust it as you're going through it, whatever. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. And much like the creative process, like, I have to be more patient than not. You know, like, I just finished up a song and I've been working on it for a year, and I've had coming out soon. No,
Link in the bio.
But I'm taking I wrote different pieces of it at different points in time throughout the year for different songs, but they made sense for this song. So it happened in such a mysterious way, but it worked out. But I was working it and working it and working it. So we have to be active in this. Gosh, we got to be active in ourselves, man. We got to be so active in ourselves, you know.
What are some of your expectations when it comes to like you creating?
I try not to have none and try not to judge it. And that's what I was saying earlier. Like, there has to be this element of play. Because if I've already done, by the time I'm going to do the thing, I've already scrutinized it. I've already gathered the ideas. I've already listened to Maya Angelou. I've already cross-referenced her to another poem that I had seen. I've already listened to Jhené Aiko. I've already kind of pulled in the information that I needed before I go and do the thing. So now it's just it's synthesizing that, and it's because now it's settled in me in such a way that I can really just express it. You know, like they say, like, nothing's new under the sun. But what's under the sun affects you differently than it does everybody else, and how you share that is yours. So
you posted something on LinkedIn the other day about creativity and how it's not spur of the moment and how it's the ideas leading up to that.
Yeah, it's who you're in the process of becoming before it, because we can start throwing around ideas right now, okay? And let's say we all coming off a rough night, didn't get no sleep, and we just start throwing out ideas, as opposed to a month from now, or as opposed to a day we come in here and we throw around ideas where you're rested, I'm rested, and we've been practicing this for about 2 months. So by the time we go in for discussion, we're more at ease. There's an ease about there's an ease in the process now versus as opposed to like a chaos and something like that. So That's a collective view, but on the individual level, it's like, who have I been becoming? For me, before I even write a song, I've been reading, I've been listening to such and such, and I've been reading such and such work, and I've been doing this. And by the time an idea comes, what is done, it's like I don't know, it's like gosh, it's like
a mosaic of everything.
Yes, and it's yours. But you're the interpreter of the ideas. I think Prince used to say, like, I have to act on the thing, or Michael or Prince said this, but they was like, I have to act on the idea as soon as it comes. One, because I know it don't come from me. I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think there's one, it doesn't come from me. And two, if I don't do it, he will. And, but they've been making music all this time, and they've been studying it, and they've been doing whatever they need to do. So when the idea arises, they can act on it. So
would you say that like Michael and Prince were like some of the most brilliant creatives that have like walked? Yeah. What makes someone like a great creative, like acting on that? Or
it has to be the action. It has to be the production of the thing. I hate production because it sounds mechanical. It's like a mechanical word, but it has to be it has to bringing it to life. It has to be the bringing it to life. That's what makes the creative, because I mean, I could be a billionaire and have no billions.
Right.
But I mean, I'm just telling myself I'm a billionaire and I have nothing to show for it.
Right.
So if I'm a creative, I probably should have something to
show for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Like, Christian, when you first came here and we had like one of our first creative sessions.
I just sat there.
Or Sydney would ask you a question.
I have no idea.
And now
it's XYZ and I don't like this and da 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 da. But I feel like that has a lot to do with like being confident in yourself.
Oh yeah, you feel empowered.
Yeah,
like to be able to say something.
Yeah,
and I think that has a truth in it though, because
trusting yourself.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like knowing that like sometimes I'm gonna say really stupid stuff, and everybody's gonna look at me and they're gonna say, "Yeah, no." And that may be okay, but at the same time, like, if I want to do it, I can do it. Kind of thing.
So and I think that's a beautiful thing, and something that I try to practice this as much as I can, but I think it's so helpful. And it's kind of what we were just talking about, where it's like, who am I in the process of becoming when the thing is about to happen? Because I don't know when it may happen. Who am I in the process of becoming? So it's almost like, who are you training with? So for me to stay out of the competition of life and to just exit from the rat race, my training ground or the people that I talk to are dead. They're not here. But these are the people that I either idolize, they inspire me, they say the things that I need to hear, whatever it is, like whatever those mediums are, that's my training ground. And that's who I'm kind of in dialogue with before I even come talk to you. So by the time I come talk to you, one, I've been practicing. And honestly, practice has been much harder than the game. So if I've been practicing with, say I've been practicing with Shakespeare and Jay-Z and Kendrick. This is who I've been practicing to. So by the time I come to, I'm not worried about you. I know what they've done, and these are the people that I'm in constant dialogue with. This is who inspire me. I could never compete against them. And so that takes that away from me. So by the time I hit the room, well, I have confidence because I've put in the work. Not only have I put in the work, but I put in the work against these people.
Or yourself, which is the toughest critic of them all.
Oh. So like I said earlier, a lot of my ideas are already under scrutiny. So, and not to say that even because they've been under that, because I've been holding them like, okay, I asked Cam this. I said, hey, how would Michelangelo use a camera? He's no longer here, but how would the greats we've known use the mediums that we have today? How would they use the tools that we have? Well, they're not here to do it. I am. But I like to play in that sort of way with the thing. So
could you tell us about a time that you thought your creation or idea would be perceived differently than what it was?
Or better than what you expected it to be?
All the time. A time when it was perceived differently than I thought it would be. Yeah. So I do write music, and that comes out in raps, and I've put them out on Instagram just to kind of shop the content. That's what I call it. Just shop the content. Are people interested in the things that I'm talking about? And whereas I'm like, that's some hard shit. Like nobody has said that. Like it's clever. It's mine. I look at, hey, did you hear this? Mm-hmm. And this has been happening for years. Like I've put out songs before. Like I've done a lot of stuff on the, videos, whatever. Like it's kind of out there. But most recently, it would probably be that, where people, they do take to it. Some people are like, I like this. And then others are like, but you want it to be, you want people to be like, this is the next great thing. Mm-hmm. But I mean, to let go of that desire, do I really want that? I just want to make the thing that I set out to make. Mm-hmm. And that's enough for me. And I think if I do that as much as I can, that's felt through whatever it is that I'm making. I mean, you always say, like, people, like, you can tell he put his heart in that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's like, put your heart in shit. And I think the outcome is, I mean, whatever it may be, I put my heart in something.
That's the ultimate reward.
It'll come back.
Will it? Do it have to come back? Maybe, maybe not. It
sounds like you're your like biggest critic, but then you're your own biggest fan as well.
Partly. So yeah, you kind of dance because I know I'm the prisoner with the keys. I have the keys.
Yeah. So
I think it's gentle criticism. Okay, my training ground is stacked. Of course, I'm not these guys, but am I pleased? Did I put my best foot forward with whatever it is that I'm doing? Okay, I've done that. And that's the one part. And then it's the, getting over yourself and putting it out there, sharing it, unadulterated. And so yeah, definitely my biggest critic and my biggest fan, but I try not to be on either extreme.
Just neutral.
Yep. Indifference is a wonderful, especially in regards to your own stuff. And then now you can always be surprised. Somebody shit on it, you be like, oh, I can't believe they said that. And then maybe you got something to work with. That's information. Mm-hmm. I can tighten it up. Cool. Thank you, bro. Yeah, I hate you, but thank you for the information. I can tighten it up. It's all information.
Does it depend on who it comes from?
Partly, but it's like, why do I care? It's like, why do I care? It's like, am I doing this for flattery? Am I doing this for praise? Am I doing this to be shit on? I'm not really doing it for either one of those. I'm really doing it because I love to do it. Mm-hmm. If I do that, man, I'm satisfied. I could die a happy man.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that in your, in the dating aspect, you tend to date creatives because of the creative process? Mm-hmm. They tend to understand it more? Or do you just date the average Jane?
I'm a serial flirter. I'm a serial flirter. So I never actually commit most times. And when I have committed, it's always been, it's just been the most loving that I find. I don't look for, you could be whatever, so long as you love me.
Okay. That's not been I don't know. I feel like when I was not a creative, I don't even categorize myself as one, but
well, you should.
My field of work now is more creative than what I've ever pretty much done. So now I'm more of a creative, but I would always tend to date artists. Mm-hmm. But then that creative process would always get in the way because I'm I just you're not talking to me. I'm you're not communicating. Yeah. But it was always because in the middle of the creating or them making whatever it is that they were working on at the time, they can't let that get away from them.
Yeah.
So that's tough.
It is, but I think relationships like that, right? It's a relationship is a coming together of opposites.
Yeah. It really is.
I'm not you, you're not me.
It really is.
Like,
no, preach.
She said amen.
I mean,
amen.
It is though. Like, I'm not you and you're not me. That's problematic from jump. But there is something that I think love could transform this. If we're willing to put in the work, love can transform this, or it can resolve the differences. And so I think the artist has to learn how to put someone before himself and what he's doing, because I mean, there's an arrogance, there's an overconfidence that can come with that. There's a lot of control there. I mean, one to control things. A lot of that is involved, and then you have the one part where, but it's like, give me your attention, give me your time. Like you may place yourself in a position where you want to feel like you're more valuable than the thing that they love, because, oh, well, you do love me. So I think some of that plays in that dynamic, and really a relationship is going to call, I think it's going to call for you to be something other than what you want to be, or to develop into someone other than like who you naturally want to be. And I think that's where the love is. It's like, you know what, I'm going to actually give you that time to do that. And then he's like, well, I'm going to put this down and I'm going to spend that time with you. It's kind of what you're looking for, but to force it, you can't. I mean, to try to force it at somebody.
That sounds miserable.
It is. Love is miserable. It's not. Isn't? I mean, is it like? You tell us, because I've never been there. Yeah. I mean, I'm not. There's an element of being
so
miserable.
Much compromise.
Yeah.
Like every single day is. I don't want to sit here and tell myself I'm a prisoner. It's so much compromise, because you see this person and you admire them so much, but sometimes they just do things and you want to bash your head into a wall.
Or theirs.
Yeah. Or I do things and I know he wants to bash my head into a wall. Yeah. And it's just like, they do things and you know that it makes them happy, or they're doing it for the betterment of both of you two. And so you let him or her do that. And I mean, even with like Trevor, I'll go home and I'll just be like so stressed out of my mind some days. I'll be like, oh, there was this project, like XYZ, like we got out of this session and I'm just completely like bare boned right now, because every single idea that I thought was absolutely great got shot down. And he doesn't know that feeling. And he won't, most likely, because he's very analytical and he's in a very analytical field. Knowing that, like, I ain't gonna go sit around and just be like that to be like that. Like, he knows that this really sucks for her. I'll listen, but I'm not gonna like be like, tough it out. Like, I'm gonna be there for you, and I'm gonna be able to like tell you like I'm here and give you what you need to be okay.
So I'm so tired of saying a creative, but I mean artistic, being more artistic, do you guys feel like you're just more naturally emotional and compassionate? Not being like a man or a woman, just like
absolutely.
Creative.
Absolutely, I do. And I think a lot of it is because we pour so much of what we do into what we love. And so, like, I'll admit it, like, there's certain things we've worked on here that I'm just naturally more passionate about, because I love their mission and I can see their passion about it. And then I pour more of myself into it because I know that's what I want to do, and I want to help you more than this thing, because this means a lot to you. You mean a lot to me as a person. And so it's more elevated in that way. Does that make sense?
I've had the joy of being able to work with you, and I mean, I think that's evident. That's been evident in a lot of the calls you would take and all that. And sometimes, and going back to the left brain, right brain thing, I think trying to use our whole brain and discern that moments when to use it is the fact that you have an analytical husband or one who thinks in logic and who's probably sharp and can just cut straight through things. It's one, admiring that in your partner, but also like we're creatures we're the greatest imitators. That's how we learn. So it's like taking that and maybe not leaning so much on passion when I'm working in creative work, because I'm here to be a guide ultimately. How about I use my analytics and knowledge that I've learned from my spouse? I can learn a greater appreciation for how it is that he comes to conflict, to resolving things. So it's just shifting and knowing when to shift, because it's not like you're always called to be passionate about everything. And this is something that I had to learn. Like, I don't have to be, my tendency is to just be like, you know what, I'm shitty. And here's why, just so we can be on like common ground and we can actually have a real conversation. That's not just kind of what I want to do, just so we're not playing around with each other and trying to, and so, but now it's just like, well, let me just ask you more about me. And the more you share, because I don't mind sharing those things, the more you share, I'll in. The more I'll put in some more, and I'll put in more and allow it to unfold in that way. But really trying to use as much as your whole brain as possible in any given regard, because even being creative, like, it's not always like when I sit and I write stuff, like, it's a very analytical process. It's a different sort of logic applied, but it's not just mathematical logic that exists. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a different logic applied and still logical, but and I have to analyze, like, okay, who's the audience, there's still that element, something that you learn in a marketing agency. You learn who's listening to, who's probably going to listen to this. What are they going to be going through? That takes some analytics, and it takes some thinking outside oneself. So it's knowing when to apply it and where, and becoming what you need to be for the situation.
That takes a lot of humbling yourself.
That's the secret to life. Life is humbling. And the more you think that you're bigger than it, well, the more it's going to hurt.
Yeah. It's definitely hard being with a logical person when you're in that emotional state, but it's really good.
Yeah, because you can get right out of it like, oh, I was tripping.
Because if he's over here crying with me, I just be emotional mess all the time.
Yeah. I don't know how I am then. I think it just depends on the day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for me, it just depends on the day.
Maybe.
I mean, especially like with the whole creative process, because again, I just said that I don't really consider myself to be like the two of you. So would you say that you're more, like, you lean more towards like, no, you're like both when it comes to like creating? There isn't like one more than the other, like emotion versus logic.
Yeah, I pour into what I'm doing. I pour into what I pour everything that I have. So be it whoever I'm trying to pour it out. One is freeing, and then, and I can go back and learn. I can go back and regather, and I can go back and receive, from life. So I try to pour it all.
So I think that was like
draining. I'm sorry.
It is. But I think, for me to run away from like experience, I would never be able to relate to anybody.
Yeah.
To like not be drained by my experiences, or not, one, not having a place to put them, not giving it a place to live, like not giving it something to be like the experience, like, because otherwise I'm just harboring it. If I haven't dealt with it, healed from it, it's just there. So I may be drained, but that's a lot better than being disturbed. So, at least for me.
I think that's beautiful. I'm just not there yet, and that's fine.
I
may never be there.
It's if you want to. We never have control. We don't have control of anything. If you want to be free from anxiety, let go of control. Boom. You know what? I don't control shit anyway. You didn't control how the sun rose. You didn't control where the wind blows. None of it.
We don't control whether we wake up or not.
Boom. I can't control the person in the driver. I can't get in your mind and make you make that right turn before I get there. I can't do that. It's not too much I can do. I can't make you talk to me the way that I really want to be talked to. I can't do none of that. This is reality. So for me to move in it as if I'm gonna get you to talk to me the way that I want to, well, I become a different person. Pretty ugly at that point,
Right.
you know. So
leave us with some words of wisdom.
I don't have any.
You just gave us so many, though.
Yeah.
I don't have any.
Okay, well then, leave us with
A piece of advice.
Don't be too proud to heal. Don't be too proud to heal. There's a lot of, and I say that because in my experience, I've always felt like I'm supposed to be tough, like tough. I'm not supposed to feel like I wronged this person or this person wronged me, and I'm acting like that stuff don't hurt. It's just not true. It hurts. And I need to acknowledge that it hurts in order to heal. And the process of becoming who you are I think it's a healing process. You know, and people can grow wings. That is a fact. You know.
I like that.
Yeah.
The process of becoming who you are is a healing process. I like that a lot.
We get beat the fuck up early in life.
Middle school is not a fun time.
It's not, but it's a real thing. You get beat up until you're like, you know what? This is no longer going to beat me up, and I'm not about to beat myself up over it.
Right.
It's beautiful. It's a painful, beautiful process, but I think they're two sides of the same coin.
They have to coexist.
Hey, pain and
Nicholas.
pleasure. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. I really do appreciate it.
No, do you want to leave the people with your social media accounts?
I can
Where
do
can they
that.
find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Nicholas Nobody. YouTube, just Nick Jones.
So you're going to release your music on Instagram and YouTube? Or
I'll put the clip out on Instagram, YouTube, and it'll be on Spotify and the other stuff.
Okay.
So, and it's a real song. It's a real song. And like I said, it's, you know, we have the ability to transform our experiences so long as we're to acknowledge, you know, what's involved with the experience. And if we share it with others, it's just like, how do you think, let's say Michael Jackson, let's say Michael Jackson. Like, oh, I feel that way too. That's how this shit works. Like, oh, I feel that way too. I'm going to follow you. I felt that way too. I've been through the same thing. I'm going to follow you.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's how we are. You know what I'm saying? So.
I'm excited to hear it.
Thank you, Nicholas Jones.
Thank you guys for having
Thanks,
me.
Nicholas.
It's been amazing. I really do appreciate it.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.